So we're talking about programmatic, which is the #1 channel for digital marketing. So display ads, TV ads, things like that. We're talking search and social. So all the search companies like Google, Yahoo, Bing. We're talking about all the social channels, Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter. We're even talking about, the native brands like Taboola and Outbrain. So any digital affiliate marketing, all those channels combined, the global spend, from what I can gather based on doing some research, was $639 billion was spent last year. And of that, based on our data that we catch, we're seeing that at about $140 billion is stolen every year.
Fastlane Founders and Legacy with Jason Barnard. Each week, Jason sits down with successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, and executives and get them to share how they mastered the delicate balance between rapid growth and enduring success in the business world. How can we quickly build a profitable business that stands the test of time and becomes our legacy? A legacy we're proud of. Fastlane Founders and Legacy with Jason Barnard.
Hi everybody and welcome to another Fastlane Founders and Legacy. It's me, Jason Barnard, and a quick hello, and we're good to go. Welcome to the show, Rich Kahn.
That's an interesting introduction. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me today.
It's an absolute pleasure. Today we're going to be unmasking ad fraud, and it's $1 billion, $100 billion problem. Is that correct?
As of last year, it was $140 billion problem.
Right. Huge problem. So we're going to be digging into why it's happening, where it's happening, and potentially what you can do about it, how it's getting worse, how you can protect yourself. But before that, we're going to quickly look at your brand SERP. It's always my favorite thing to do right at the start of the show. When I search your name, this is what I see. You're up there with a few other people with the same name. And I was kind of disappointed that when I search your name, I don't see that looks much, much better. That's your knowledge panel. And it's actually quite a good knowledge panel with those lovely images at the top, the blue cards, the description on the right-hand side, Google's factual understanding about you. And for the audience, this is what we do. We take people from this situation where Google isn't presenting them primarily. It's presenting lots of other people. You don't look so good. And here you look like a superstar. And in fact, I can tell you the reason that it's not doing that. It isn't confident enough that you are famous enough. Do you feel it's wrong?
It's funny. A little story. I'm a storyteller. I like to tell stories.
Oh, cool.
I saw a gentleman, and I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but he's a guy who sees spirits from the other world, right?
Right.
And we were in an audience in Atlantic City of about 1,000 of us in the audience, and he comes over in my direction. He's saying he's looking for somebody famous. I don't consider myself famous at all. And he's consisting and pushing. And then he says, look, if you walked into it, and then this is where he got specific. He said, if you walked into a trade show, would people know who you are? And I'm like, oh, that's me. I go to trade shows. I've been going to trade shows for the last 20 plus years. I walk into a trade show. Everybody knows who I am. And he goes, well, that's famous. I go, well, I don't consider that famous. I mean, I'm well known in my industry, but outside of my industry, not as much. So it's kind of, so do I consider myself famous? No.
Right. Okay. Well, and that is an interesting point, is that when somebody's searching on Google, you need to be considered by Google to be the most famous person with your name. Whereas with AI, with CAPTCHA and so on and so forth, they have context. So being important within your industry, within your niche, when somebody's having a conversation with ChatGPT is actually significantly easier to do because it can niche down, because it has more context when you're talking. So onwards with ad fraud, $140 billion a year. And that's a huge amount. How much is ad spend a year?
Last year, ad spend was $639 billion globally. So if
Right.
you're talking about a 22% amount, people, and the thing is, it's people don't understand. Like, I like to watch Shark Tank a lot, and people will talk about this new product, and they're going to disrupt a $10 billion industry, a $20 billion industry.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of money being spent, and people don't recognize how much $140 billion is. So what's interesting is we're predicting by 2028 it to be over 200 billion. which is more money than Disney and Netflix combined, just to put it in scale.
Okay. So our number of 140 billion and ad fraud, what ad fraud does it actually cover? Because are we talking about Google, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn?
Everything. So we're talking about programmatic, which is the number one channel for digital marketing. So display ads, TV ads, things like that. We're talking search and social. So all the search companies like Google, Yahoo, Bing. We're talking about all the social channels, Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter. We're even talking about, the native brands like Taboola and Outbrain. So any digital affiliate marketing, all those channels combined, the global spend, from what I can gather, based on doing some research, was $639 billion was spent last year. And of that, based on our data that we catch, we're seeing that as about $140 billion is stolen every year.
Right. So we've got 20% stolen. What are the forms of stealing?
So it really comes down to using bots, malware, or human fraud farms to click on ads, view impressions. So, affiliate marketing, let's face it, affiliate marketing is paid to generate some type of action, whether it's a click, fill-in form, credit card transaction. They're paid to do something. And once you start paying people to do something, the cheaters find a way to come out of the woodwork and cheat the system. So let's say you pay an affiliate to drive visitors to your landing page, whatever that page is. So let's look at a typical example. So let's say that let's call it John. John is an affiliate, and he gets paid to drive traffic to a site. He's got a site that talks about, let's use cars, for example, car insurance. It's just a weird one. We'll just talk about car insurance. He's got a whole blog site dedicated to car insurance and how to save money on car insurance and what insurances are important to have, which ones are a waste of money. And he does all this stuff. So he generates a lot of readership. He generates, let's say, 1 million visitors a month coming to his site because people want to know, it's a very hot topic in the industry. People always talk about it, save money on it. And he drives traffic to your site and he gets paid for all those clicks. And he's like, wow, for my 1 million visitors, I generated $10,000 in revenue or $20,000 in revenue this month. I wonder if I can go out and buy traffic to my site and drive that traffic over and make more money. So now he starts searching the internet and he finds some cheap traffic sites where he can buy another 1 million visitors, really inexpensive. So let's say he's making $10,000 on his 1 million visitors, right? He finds that he can buy another 1 million visitors to his site for $5,000 and they're still generating the same 10,000. So in his mind, hey, I'm spending 5, making 10. Oh, who wouldn't want to double their money every month? That's the greatest investment of all time. But where he's buying traffic is latent with fraud and he has no idea. So what ends up happening is the advertiser is now being exposed to fraud, even though John is not trying to commit fraud. It's just how he buys his traffic. And it's not on purpose. Let's face it. If you buy traffic from Google, there's fraud in there. You buy traffic from Facebook, there's fraud in there.
That affiliate idea of saying, well, if I'm sending traffic, I get more money for more traffic would be solved by saying, well, you only get paid if we sell something.
Right. Well, people, advanced fraudsters know that, right? So in order to get paid, they know that every so many visitors has to have some type of transaction. It could be filling out a form to save money on their car insurance, like a lead generation play. It could be putting a credit card in the system to buy a product off of Amazon. And they use stolen credit cards to do this. Right. Because affiliates, they generally want to get paid fast, right? So the average affiliate payout is 15 days. The average response for a credit card chargeback is months. So I can be an affiliate, generate a lot of these false transactions, getting paid my affiliate commission within 15 days, and know I can stick around for a while before you catch on that I'm a fraudulent visitor or a fraudulent affiliate, and then try to charge me back. And I'm already gone. I created a new affiliate ID and I'm starting the whole process all over again.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And what about the fraudulent traffic on Google or Facebook? How does that work?
Okay. 2 very different ways, right? So let's start with Google and then we'll go into Facebook. So Google, Google only gets about, when you go to Google and you buy traffic from Google, we're talking about Google search right now because they have a lot of different products. We're just talking about Google search that everybody's familiar with. So 10% of the traffic that you buy from Google comes from google.com.
Mm-hmm.
The other 90% comes from technically affiliates or what they'll call publishers, right? But you're familiar with like CNN and weather.com. That all makes sense. But there's thousands of tens of thousands of websites out there that have small blog sites, and Google puts Google AdSense on those sites because they're valuable traffic. And, those people tend to go out and buy cheap traffic to try to make more money off the traffic. And therein lies some fraud. So on Google search directly, we'll typically see 5 to 10% fraud because they have that model. Now let's look at Facebook. Facebook doesn't buy traffic.
From that perspective, it's actually with the AdSense on people's website, it's quite similar to the affiliate story you told early on.
Very similar.
But from the search itself, that's a much smaller problem.
It's still 5 to 10% because even though Google AdSense should choose those words, there are affiliates that have access to Google search listings where you'll see like an article and then you'll see some search links embedded inside of the article, and then you'll see some more content, and that's how they wrap their content, and they get paid on those clicks. Anytime somebody clicks on one of those ads, that site gets paid, and of course, if they get paid to do something, they find a way to cheat.
Right. Okay. Anyway, onto Facebook, which I know nothing about.
Okay, so Facebook doesn't have an affiliate network, doesn't have a publisher. Everything they generate is user generated. It's just organic traffic coming to the site. So, first question I'll always ask my audience is, do you believe Facebook has fake profiles? And we all say yes. We all know this. They talk about it. They're in the process of trying to shut them down. But why? Ever go to Fiverr and find out you can buy 10,000 likes for your website for like $100?
Yeah. Okay.
Where does that come from? So what happens is the fraud takes place and makes money off of Facebook indirectly. So my definition of fraud talks about the reason for fraud is somebody's making money either directly or indirectly on that traffic. And so if Facebook isn't going to be an indirect form of that.
Okay. Right. So it's all about traffic. We scared everybody. There's lots of fraud, 20%, depending on the platform. Google's only 10%. So Google is relatively nice, let's say. What can we do to spot this early? Because obviously you can't prevent it. What you can do is spot it early. Because you were saying several months. You can prevent it.
But let's talk about spotting it first. Okay. So I always tell people now, it's not a question of if you have fraud, because everyone's always wondering, do I have fraud? It's a question of how much. We all have it. I have personally tested over 1,000 companies' websites and found fraud in every one of them. Some have small amounts because they're doing a lot of proactive steps to try to minimize the fraud. And some have significantly higher amounts. So look, we talked about Google, right? So Google's got 5 to 10% fraud on their search product, right? But programmatic is one of the largest channels of marketing. So banners and TV ads.
Right.
And that averages 50% fraud.
Wow.
50% fraud. And I can go into a whole talk about why, but it's 50% fraud.
Yeah, I mean, my team mentioned the TV fraud, which I was surprised to see in this conversation. Connected TV ad fraud is surging. 172 billion by 2028 is what Gab tells me. Why is that so high?
Well, all right, let's look at it. So to understand that, you have to understand fraud itself, right? So are you familiar with the IAB, the Internet Advertising Bureau?
Yeah.
Okay. They're like the king. You got the 4As and you got the ANA. They kind of got together about 12 years ago and they built a industry standard for fraud detection companies, because fraud detection companies started coming out around 2008, 2009. They started growing. And so they said, we're going to put some standards around this because I can see this getting out of control. It's a SaaS-based product. SaaS is sexy when it comes to making money because it's got a low cost of goods sold versus what they, so always got the whole 9 yards. So they decided, okay, we're going to classify this. We're going to call it IVT, invalid traffic. Most people are familiar with that term IVT, but what they're not familiar with is how IVT is classified in their process. So what they did was they classified GIVT for general invalid traffic. It's your basic data center attacks, some known bots, things like that. Then you got your SIVT, which is sophisticated invalid traffic. your advanced bots like AI bots, malware, human fraud farms that can skirt detection, things like that. So the reason connected TV, so I'm going to go back one more second. So GIVT can be done through an API call. You pass the IP address user agent, and then you can determine whether that's fraud or not on 2 data points. SIVT requires a more sophisticated approach. Our SIVT product is collecting over 800 data points on the person and is able to make a decision based on that and find the most sophisticated levels of fraud.
Right.
So now that we know the 2 different kinds, CTV, connected TV, only allows an API call. So it can only determine based on GIVT analysis. So fraudsters know this, right? They know, hey, I got to bounce off of different IPs. I can't use data centers. I got to do things a little bit more sophisticated. They produce sophisticated levels of fraud that cannot be detected in the CTV environment. And therefore, just like programmatic, it has a problem with sophisticated and valid traffic. And that's why it's growing so fast.
Okay. Oh, that was super interesting. Now we're back to how do we spot it early, and then how do we prevent it?
Okay. So to spot traffic, you follow the numbers, right? So if you're selling stuff, look at the chargebacks, right? Is my chargebacks increasing? Because, affiliates are going to use fake credit cards. If you're a lead generator or you're a brand that's generating a lead for, let's say you're Geico and hey, somebody comes to your site, fills out a form, they want to save money on their car insurance. When you call that person, do they remember filling out your form? Are they easy to get on the phone? Because it's very easy for me to steal Jason's information, go into a form as an affiliate, pay a human fraud firm to do it so they don't get caught by bot detection. Type in your name, phone number, email address, hit submit. They do a data check to say, yep, I got Jason. No, this is definitely his email, definitely his phone number. Then they call you usually within seconds of the form being filled out. And you're like, I don't remember filling out a form. You just filled it out 2 seconds ago. No, that wasn't me. That's a level of fraud. Now, what the problem with that is the brand that made that phone call just broke TCPA compliance and can be sued for TCPA violations.
Right.
Which is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. So now they can be sued for stuff. Class act. And now let's say you're a big brand, like we were using Geico, right? So let's say Geico makes 1 million phone calls a month. A lawyer gets one person complain. Guess what they're going to do? Subpoena the records. Look at other call disposition reports that say that they didn't fill out the form and now build a class action lawsuit. Speaking of which, it's the fastest growing lawsuits in this country of TCPA violation class action lawsuits.
Wow.
Oh, so that's a problem that they're going to run into, right?
You need to create the data point. So when you're calling people, you need that question. Do you remember filling in the form? And that helps you to actually identify, and you can immediately say, well, actually, we're getting a lot more of these and we need to stop, or we need to look at our advertising. And then for the chargebacks, however, you've got that time lag. You were saying there's a time lag of several months.
Yeah. So this is how, after the fact, you can determine that there's been a problem. In order to determine things beforehand, at this day and age, you need a solution up front. So like a solution like what we do for our clients is we basically put our code there. As soon as the person lands on the landing page, within a second, we know if it's real or fake before they fill out a form, before they process a credit card, so that we can allow our clients to stop that transaction in its steps and prevent, mitigate buying that type of traffic in the future. So it's a 2-step approach. One, protect immediately, and then also protect your budget as you move forward.
Identify where the traffic is coming from so that you can immediately say, well, this is the dirty one. And so why are you able to do it when Google's CAPTCHA, for example, still struggles?
Well, think about it. Okay, a CAPTCHA, right, is filling out a puzzle.
Yeah.
Human fraud farms are involved all the time. They can fill out those puzzles too. AI has gotten to a point they get past all CAPTCHAs. So CAPTCHAs don't work anymore. People still use them. They just don't work.
Okay. So the question, whether it's CAPTCHA or another technology, why is it that you can detect somebody, or that it isn't a person, or it's a fraudulent visit within, you said 2 seconds, where massive companies like Google struggle?
I actually spoke, I was at a trade show 3 or 4 weeks ago. I actually met with the head of fraud for Google because they wanted to find out why we're catching stuff that they're missing.
Right.
They've got 1,000 people on their team that this is what they do. And he goes, it's just, that certain team environments, there are certain things that we miss. You look at data differently than we look at data. They have access to data. They have access to a huge amount of data.
Maybe
But again, they only have access to Google data. I have access to the world. I have data they don't have access to, because I see traffic coming from X. I see traffic coming from LinkedIn. I see traffic from Programmatic. Like, they don't have access to that data. And we've been doing fraud detection longer, I think, than any other company in the marketplace. We started the project in 2005.
Oh, wow.
So we've been building and tracking trillions of visitors, looking at data, and our stuff is based on performance feedback from clients. So when a client comes back and says, hey, I think you mismarked this person, this real person, as fraud, and here's why, we'll go back and fix the issue. Why do we do that? Because we stand on our no false positive guarantee. We have a no false positive guarantee. So the last thing I want is Jason coming to my site, trying to buy a product, and you can't because I'm mismarking you as fraud, because then it really costs the client a lot of money.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, based on client feedback, the average fraud protection solution in the marketplace has an average of 15% false positives. So think how costly that gets.
Okay. Yeah, no, so, and that was actually going to be my question to Duvoy when you get a false positive and you stop them. But you're saying there's a 20% loss, but on the one side of fraud, and a 15% false positive on the other. So within the industry, generally speaking, forgetting your solution, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Well, yes and no. So 15, so the percentages aren't the same, right? When I'm saying there's 20% plus fraud in the industry, right? We're looking at 15% false positives. That means the company marked 20% of your traffic as fraudulent. 15% of that would have been mismarked. So it ends up being like a 3 or 4% issue.
Right.
Still a problem, because I'll give a perfect example. We have a content writer on our team, and she was buying some fashion stuff from a woman's fashion site. She's always shopped before. They've upgraded their website. She put a couple $100 worth of stuff in her basket, went to purchase, and won't let her purchase it. So she's like, I know this is it. They must have upgraded their fraud protection to some company. I know how it works. I'm going to switch browsers. Switch browsers didn't have an issue. Then she switched devices. She went to her tablet or her cell phone, did the same thing, still couldn't make the purchase. So they must have blocked her IP address, because some old school technologies think you can block by IP address. And you guys should all know you can't, because I'm in an office right now. There's 25 of us in the office, and we all share the same IP address. Go to Starbucks, you all share the same IP address. You go to a cell tower, all share the same IP address. So she went to the competitor, put the same items into the shopping cart, made the purchase. She said, from now on, I'm going to buy from the competitor because I don't have a problem.
So
that false positive just cost them a client that spends good money.
So I don't understand. So one last question then is, with AI, and AI is going to make fraud even more prevalent, but also fraud detection potentially much, much better. Who's going to win?
It's a cat and mouse game, right? Because at the end of the day, AI is a tool available to both the fraudster and the good guys, right? So the fraudsters have been using, in fact, they made it easy. So let's say you're not really much of a developer, but you're a little technical savvy, right? Like most people are these days, because we all know how to use a computer, and we can follow direction. We can follow YouTube video. Well, you can go to the dark web and download a product called Fraud GPT, and it will actually write the bots for you.
Right.
You can tell it what type of attack you're looking to make, how you want to make it, and it'll spit out the code. And then you can say, how do I implement this? It'll actually walk you step by step through how to implement that type of bot. So it's now you have a whole slew of people who maybe didn't have the technical skill, now do, to commit fraud. But at the same token, we, the good guys, have access to AI to help us continue to find more fraud. And it's a constant cat and mouse game. The biggest thing for us, and I think most of my competitors do the same, is catching when a new level of fraud takes place, having that fraud found before it becomes a big wide scale problem. So usually we're rolling out updates twice a week, once or twice a week, of new levels of fraud that we caught. And usually the impact on the network is like 0.0001%. Like, it's just starting. It's not a big problem. Nobody's complaining about it, but we catch it in time so we can solve it before it becomes, oh my God, I just noticed that 20% of my traffic looks weird and you're not catching it. So we're able to do that kind of stuff.
Brilliant. Wonderful. So we don't know who will win, but you're certainly on the ball. And I mean, when you were saying we update twice a week, I think from a customer perspective, we don't realize that things are moving quite that fast. And with spyware, malware, must be the same kind of story, maybe more often. And certainly with Google in the SEO world, people in the SEO world focus on the big updates, and they forget that Google are updating their algorithms hundreds of times a day, and so are Microsoft. Back onto my terrain there. Thank you very much, Rich. That was absolutely delightful.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. You get the outro song, which is exactly the same as the intro song. A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Rich.
Appreciate it, Jason. Thanks for having me today.
Your corporate and personal brands are what Google and AI say they are. We can give you back control. CAPTCHA.